This is Gosport. It's close to where I was born and I lived here for the first year of my life, but that was good enough for the exam board to do a documentary on where I live, so let's begin. This is a documentary about the Gosport forts, their history, modern development and current controversy. Our story begins in 1859, when the Palmerston forts that surround Portsmouth were built to combat the perceived threat of the French invasion. The Portsmouth defences can be split into 5 different groups: the Isle of Wight forts, the Sea forts, the Portsea Island forts, the Portsdown Hill forts and the Gosport forts. And today we'll be talking about one fort in particular, this one. Fort Gilkicker falls into the Gosport group, built to defend Portsmouth from incoming attacks using its 27 gun positions. The historic Palmerston fort erected at the end of Stokes Bay in the 1960s. And from day one it was plagued by issues and controversy. The local paper stated that the battery was in danger of collapse under the weight of its own guns, and could easily be captured by a small force landing in the bay. So, as a result, the Defence Committee, not a very creative name guys, come on, proposed a new work to replace it. And in 1905 it was decided that the heavy armament of Gilkicker and another nearby location, Fort Browndown, were only of use against ships that had already defeated the outer defences, basically meaning that they were only useful as a plan B in the event of an invasion. Eventually, after they had replaced the guns with something smaller, the British realised that the French didn't want to invade us. So, from 1939 to 1999, it had many different purposes. So many, in fact, that I do not want to do a voiceover for them, so here's a full list. And now we turn to the modern development of the site. In 1999, the Phoenix Trust, a much more creative name guys, suck it Defence Committee, proposed to turn the location into apartments but cancelled the project in 2001. A similar redevelopment scheme was proposed by Tri-Homes in 2003 and then cancelled the project in 2006. Then Asset Hawk gave it a shot in 2007 before cancelling the project in 2012. Then Fort Gilkicker Developments Limited tried again in 2016, and finally a project came along that looked promising. A project rejuvenating the historic site to something that would be a tribute to its former glory, before cancelling the project in 2018 due to financial issues. Finally, on the 28th of July 2022, it was sold to Dinesbeck Partners for $1.38 million, with plans to turn it into 26 homes. The scheme was expected to cost over $20 million and will take the next 3 years to complete, with work starting later that year. Which brings us to the year 2025, and this is the state of the fort now. 3 years later, and this is what we've got. Needless to say, it's going to take more than 3 years to complete, and from the graffiti and other less conspicuous evidence of break-ins around the fence, it's clear the locals aren't pleased with the work. But the fort has experienced break-ins before. Problems with trespass incidents by local schoolchildren at the site before the building work began led to over 20 police call-outs, causing developers to tighten security procedures and leaving the site with 24-hour CCTV security patrols. In response, a spokesperson from the Gosport Borough Council said, "The council has sold the access to the Military Road, which forms part of the Solent Way to the FGDL. Luckily, when the council sold the road along with the fort, it preserved the right for the public to continue using the route along the north side of the fort to the bottom of Military Road." And if you think about this for more than 2 seconds, it was clear that the council hadn't, because by selling public road to a private company to stop the public from trespassing, yet still allowing public access, seems a little pointless. There has been talk that this is actually some sort of cover-up, however there isn't much evidence for that, but it is clear that the developers are attempting something, because although Military Road hasn't been blocked off, the main path to the Military Road has. Regular dog walkers around Fort Gilkicker have expressed their anger over this workaround. Marilyn King, who lives in Gosport, said, "The area used to be lovely, with panoramic views across the sea. Now the council are attempting to privatise the area and turn it into a millionaire's retreat by closing the public right-of-way from the fort to the road." A different Marilyn Grant from Stubbington, says, "Thousands of people walk around this historic site every day. The council needs to think again to prevent this historic fort from becoming private." The worst part of this is, despite the walk's popularity, if you struggle with mobility, it is incredibly difficult to walk the long way around the fort due to the shingle beach. If you are elderly, pushing a pram, in a wheelchair, or even if you're just a cyclist, this area is completely shut off. And there is even more evidence of the developments going back on their word. Part of the renovations included the unearthing process of the granite wall, that since 1902 was placed there to add additional protection from incoming gunfire. Now, of course, this gunfire never came, so for 123 years it stayed there. Migratory birds like dunlin, brent geese, gulls, as well as kestrels and skylarks in the surrounding grassland areas, and the shingle and wetland areas support invertebrates such as isopods and amphipods. And finally, the incredibly rare Gilkicker weevil, which thrives on a specific sea kale and short-growing vegetation found in the area. Now, in 2025, there is currently no data on how the removal of the Earth has affected the environment. However, you don't need a genius to figure out that there has been an impact. All of the land that once sat here has been flattened and relocated just next to the site here, covering the surrounding environment. Andrew Temperton is the managing director of Wild Boar Developments and said that not only was their company aware of the wildlife, but it is actively doing something to support it. But nearby residents don't believe in Temperton's words. In 2017, Kevin Isley said, "I went back in the summer and heard the birds singing. When I came back this year, the land had been all pulled up. To me it seems obvious that they are bending the rules, but everybody has already given the development the go-ahead." And he was right. Planning consent for the developments of the site in 2017 included plans to improve and increase the wildlife habitats, which of course is a huge positive, but as you know, if you've been paying attention, the fort was sold at auction to developers in 2022. And as of time of writing this, September 2025, I was unable to find anything apart from local anger at the sale, as Dinesbeck partners have not updated their wildlife protection plans since 2017. So we are left with this image of habitats that used to be here, either removed or covered by the new development, with nothing to say about what wildlife concerns are being dealt with. And now, this is all well and good having a random 18-year-old on the internet talk to you about other people's experiences. So I had the opportunity to talk to someone who has a close relationship with Fort Gilkicker. He has personal experience inside the now restricted area, and has spent years of his life living in a similar fort, Fort Brockhurst, just down the road, and is also, coincidentally, my father.
Hi, my name's Dave. I spent a lot of time at Fort Gilkicker when I was a kid, just doing like bird watching and just generally goofing about. I also lived in another fort, Fort Brockhurst, in the custodian's flat for 4.5 years. Yeah, it was interesting living at Fort Brockhurst in that. It was a bit like living on a desert island in the middle of a town, because it was just you, just me there, with the ghosts, and it was great for most of the time, but unfortunately we did get people breaking in to do damage, which could be a bit stressful at times, but I did manage to chase a few of them away. I just thought I was mental. But anyway, yeah, it's interesting, and it filled a part of my life that I'll never forget. Yeah, it had its ups and it had its downs, but overall I enjoyed it. Fort Gilkicker, we moved to that part of Gosport when I was, I think, 10, and so it became part of my childhood to go down there and play and whatever, and I was very interested in nature. Used to spend a lot of time there, looking for lizards and all sorts of things, and bird watching. Yeah, spent a lot of time as a teenager, we'd go down there and have parties. It's just like it's just always been a part of my life, and I still enjoy going down there, walking down there with my children, and a bit older, and telling them all about it. Well, what I've seen so far, I'm sure that it appeals to some people to live there. I certainly wouldn't want to live there. I think the access would be pretty difficult, with going across the golf course in the car, etc. Golf ball in your eye. But yeah, well, it's a shame really, because I've got a lot of memories there, and it's changed beyond recognition, and you can't actually get in there, you can't climb it like we used to when we were kids. So mixed feelings really. Yeah, I think sharing it with a load of other people would lose its appeal for me, and you become very attached to a place like that, and you care about it a lot. So I'm very quite grateful for that experience.
But surely it can't be that difficult to redevelop a site like this. I mean, what about the 9 other forts that make up the Gosport forts? Let's take a look at how they're doing, shall we? Fort Moncton is owned by the military, Fort Grange is owned by the Navy, the Stokes Bay Lines is only half there and used for lots of different things, the Browndown Battery and Fort Brookhurst are privately owned, Fort Gomer was demolished and is now known as the Gomer Housing Estate, Fort Fareham and Elson are derelict, and Fort Rowner is also derelict but holds popular fishing competitions. So it turns out there isn't one solution, and often these forts fall to demolition or abandonment. And at the end of the day, whatever happens to Fort Gilkicker will have some positive impact in the long run, even if how it got to that point leaves a bad taste in our mouths.